This morning I was answering questions and emails, and I thought some of these might be helpful to answer in a video. How's it going? I'm Jared Gillis. Welcome to another All About RVs video. And today, answering some of those questions. I actually get quite a few questions throughout the week, and let's tackle a handful of these. So we got question number one coming from Jeff Brown. He says, I would like to rip out the linoleum in my camper. Do you have a video on that, or what do you suggest? So you've probably seen from a lot of our other videos that we've replaced just about all the flooring in our RV. And there's a few things that we keep in mind when we're doing it. It's actually a pretty easy process, and it's nice to be able to make it your own personal style. So I would consider weight when you're looking at flooring. And you also want to consider the durability. Is it going to hold up to going out camping and tracking in a lot of stuff? So weight, durability, how is the install going to go? With a lot of these vinyl tongue and groove click together kind of floating systems, or the peel and stick, there's a lot of great options out there. When you're going to install it, you also want to consider how you're going to trim the edges. Be ready to do some trim work with that. For instance, we put quarter round around our cabinets and around the walls. We put trim work, just normal trim. And we do that because if it's a floating floor, like a click together vinyl, then you're going to stop that. Usually they have you stop just a little bit before your wall or your cabinets, so there's not buckling if there's expansion or anything like that. Usually you do that on wood floors. That usually goes over to vinyl floors too, just because your cuts don't have to be 100% perfect exact. You can cover it up with some of that trim work. So be prepared to do some of that. It helps it make it look a lot better. And doing this really just adds a personal touch of your own to your RV. And so if you're thinking about doing that, I think it's a great idea. Just consider weight as number one, durability, and the install factor. Oh, and just a quick side note on that. Sometimes the transition strip can be one of the most difficult things to deal with. You don't want to leave a gap if your slide is one that kind of sits flush. If it's one that sits up, what are you going to do? You need to put some kind of edging on that, or if it sits flat. Right now we're using like a cove base. We've used wood before, but something to fill that gap so that stuff doesn't fall in there, it doesn't look ugly. So consider what you're going to do with that. Get a game plan before you tear out all your flooring so that you're going to be happy with the finished product. Moving on to the next question comes from Carlos. He says, I know you did a review on the Gerard Tankless water heater and a follow-up. I'm wondering, after all this time, do you still recommend it versus a traditional water heater? And I would say definitely yes and no. Well, for us, my wife and I were talking about it. If we were going to get a new rig, number one on the list of things that we would change on the RV is we would go to a tankless water heater. Hands down, we absolutely love it. Now, do I recommend it to everybody? Absolutely not, because you have to be willing to use it as this tankless water heater works best. I say works best because I don't know if this is entirely how they intended it to be used, but for us, and I think the area that people have a lot of frustration with it, and they try them and they hate them, is if you try and use it like a regular tank water heater. And this one I'm specifically talking about the Gerard, the one that we have. It doesn't do well if you turn on the hot water to go take a shower and then try and mix in the cold. It's going to shut off on you. It's going to be miserable. At times it's going to be too hot and then freezing cold. And you're just going to absolutely hate it. But for us, we set the temperature for the water heater. If I want to take a shower at 108 degrees, I set it at 108 and I take a shower. I only turn on the hot water. So if you're not willing to use it that way, I would absolutely not recommend it to you. If you are willing to use it that way, then they are fantastic. Now, I said it's specific to the Gerard because I don't think the Truma is that way. You're going to pay a lot more for the Truma, but I think as far as using it like a normal water heater, and the quality of the product, I think it is absolutely amazing. I'd love to get a hands-on trial review of the Truma, but we absolutely love our Gerard tankless water heater. So the main reasons why we like it and we would do it again is because we can get, we have a family of 4. We don't have to worry about any recovery time in between showers. So I know a lot of people will say the tank ones, they recover quick. We don't even have to think about that. It's just 0 recovery time. You can go from washing dishes to somebody jumping into the shower with 0 time in between. And you're not limited to 6-gallon worth of a shower if you're in an RV park. We have the option to still save water when we're out there. We can still do a quick shower, but if you want to take a little bit longer shower when you're in an RV park because you're not worried about conserving water for your tanks, you can take just a normal shower, which is nice for us being full-time. If it's a weekend situation, you may not really care about it. You can take short showers and it's totally fine. But for us, having that convenience, living full-time in the rig, is just hands down one of the things that we love about having a tankless water heater. Okay, number 3. This is way better than typing. I'm loving this. This one comes from Jim. My friends call me Fish. With a name like that, if we ever meet on the road, we are going fishing. You're taking me to some kind of special fishing spot secret fishing spot that you know of. But here's his question. My question is, or maybe your thoughts on running your propane gas refrigerator off your inverter while driving from location to location. I've always turned my gas off for traveling. It's off for hours, and I just thought the other day, why couldn't I run the inverter for it while driving? Currently, my inverter is small and is only hooked into one circuit. What are your thoughts? I think it could be a good idea, running your refrigerator off of your batteries, but there's a few things that I would want to consider. I agree with you. We always turn our propane off when we travel. I just feel better about it. I feel a little safer. I know tons of people have done it for a long time. We recommend to people and always turn our propane off when we travel. It's easier around tunnels, all that kind of stuff. So great idea there. And running your fridge off of the inverter, I would consider your battery bank, because you don't want to get to where you're camping, especially if you're going to be going boondocking. You don't want to get there with your batteries already drained. You also want to consider how big your inverter is, how much draw your specific fridge will be drawing from that battery bank. And so if you're considering those things, if you have solar on your rig, you can help replenish some of that's getting pulled out of your batteries while you drive. Even your vehicle charging your batteries as you drive can be a benefit too in that situation. I don't know if it would put any more stress on your vehicle that you're towing with. I don't think it would, but something to consider. So I'll have to try that out. But for our fridge, I know if we're pulling it off the inverter, it pulls about 30 amps out of the batteries. Now it's not 100% cycle all the time. It's cycling off and on. So that's not 100% of the time. And I know that our solar setup that we're going to be installing soon is about that same equivalent that it can be putting into the batteries. So it could be somewhat of a wash. You might be able to make enough power as you drive through your solar, use it from your batteries to be able to run your fridge. But you want to know how many amps your fridge is going to draw, how much battery capacity you have, and are you going to be able to get your batteries up to capacity when you get there or as you're driving, because you don't want to show up with empty batteries. So those are the things that I would consider, but I don't see a problem with running your fridge off the inverter. I think it's a good idea. Okay, our next question is from Keith Gray. If I put 2 Battleborn 100 amp batteries in my fifth wheel, what amp converter should I use? Because there's a lot of options out there for how many amps in a converter you can put in there. So I know that Battleborn batteries, they say this plainly, that you can charge their battery at like 5 times the speed of a lead acid. So if it's a 100 amp hour battery, they say you could technically charge it at 100 amps. Like you could get a 100 amp converter and charge it. They also say that's not good for the battery. It's not good to charge it that fast. So what they usually recommend is about 50%. You're not going to do any damage to that battery if it's a 100 amp hour battery and you charge it at 50 amps. It's supposed to be completely fine and not harm your battery at all. So I would recommend you could do something up to there. So we have 200 amp hour Battleborn batteries in ours, and we have I think it's the 65 amp 60 or 65 amp from Progressive Dynamics, and it works great. I've seen it when it's charging. It does good. It doesn't do it too fast. Obviously, we're not at that stage where it would be too fast. We're also it charges it up fairly quickly, so it does an efficient job. I would highly recommend it. I think it's a great unit. So yeah, that's what we use. Got another question from Brent Davis, and kind of on a battery kick here. I have heard recently of a gel battery. I'm guessing it's between the AGM and lithium batteries. So usually the price of gel batteries is you have like AGM gel and lithium. So it'd be natural to think that the gel is going to be better than the AGM. But traditionally, if you're looking at that type of battery chemistry and the pros and cons to those kind of things, 100 times to 1, people are going to buy the AGM. I think literally they sell 100 AGM batteries to 1 gel battery. AGM batteries, they do a little bit better if you're going to draw a massive amount of power out of them at a time. Gel batteries don't perform quite as well traditionally. So why spend that much more money when it's going to be similar performance? Gel batteries do, they handle the heat a little bit better. Now, all batteries they don't love the heat, so it would be marginal. So it would be a strange situation why you would want to do that because of heat. Your AGM, your absorbed glass mat battery is going to do fantastic. Now, the gel battery, each of them, you can mount them into different positions. You don't have to check the fluids in them. I believe both of them are like no maintenance. They have a lot of similar properties, but I would recommend going with an AGM. There's a lot of great options out there for AGM batteries. Next question, Scott Haley, another battery question. I know very little about batteries, and I guess I missed it in your explanation in the video where I said a good rule of thumb is don't let your depth of discharge, how low you bring down your battery, go beyond that 50%. How does one know when it's at 50%? Thanks. So, great question. Now, that 50% mark, like we were just talking about those AGM batteries, there's some AGM batteries that say you can bring it down to 80%. The key is, since we're talking about the depth of discharge, just a quick side note, is if you're going to bring your batteries down to 50% or 80%, the key is there's going to be kind of a sulfation process that begins there. And the longer that it sits with that sulfation on those plates, the worse it's going to be for your battery. So in a nutshell, very simple. If you're going to bring your batteries down, it's a good idea, not a good idea. It's better for your battery. It's safer for your battery, and your battery will last longer if you charge it up quickly. Don't let it sit down at that depth of discharge being down there for a very long time. You want to bring it back up. So that brings back to his question is, how do you know when you get down to that 50% mark? So a good battery monitor, having a good battery monitor. I don't like the battery monitor that came in our RV. It's basically just a light system, and it tries to tell you where your battery is at with voltage. But if you're drawing or if you're charging, you don't really know where your batteries are at. Your battery has to be sitting stationary for a while, not having any load or charge put on it, so that you can know where it's at as far as your percentage. But if you have a good battery monitor with a shunt, that is how you know. So let me grab something. So these are a couple of battery monitors that we're going to be talking about in the future. This one's a Belmar. It's the SG200. Phenomenal new technology coming out in this, and it's probably around the same price range as the Victron one that we have. That we actually love our battery monitor. They're around $200. So pretty pricey, but amazing information and technology that comes out of these kind of guys. So we are going to be doing another video. This has cute little baby shunt, little 100 amp shunt. But this will also give you some information, a lot of limitations compared to this guy, but this will definitely help you figure out how much juice you still have in your batteries. And this guy cost around $18. A lot of limitations on this, but I want to give you guys options so that you can better monitor your battery level. So a good battery monitor with a shunt. The shunt is kind of the key part to knowing what is in your battery. So I have a whole video on that. I'll put a link to it if you wanted to see more about that. So good battery monitor. So last couple of questions. Let's see here. We got Ronald Landers. This one's kind of funny. He says, anyone ever tell you that you resemble Jim Nabors? Maybe I'll just leave it at that, Jim Nabors. If you know who Jim Nabors, no. That's Gomer Pyle from Andy Griffith. You know, the guy that, well, golly, Andy, Shazam! You know, that guy. Yes, I have been told only from people on YouTube that I look like Jim Nabors. I've never had anybody in real life. Maybe they're too embarrassed to tell me I look like Jim Nabors. I've been told I look like Travis Pastrana back when I had like bushy hair. Also, that reminds me, somebody asked what I look like without a hat. There you go. Another answer to your question. So I think that's going to do it, and hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already and you want to see more videos coming up, hit that subscribe button, and if we don't see you on the road, hopefully we'll see you in the next video.